Here we are. It is June 11th, and welcome to our virtual policy and action update. We are going to dive right in with the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. It's not going great, friends, unfortunately, and I don't mean to be cavalier about that. It's a real problem. So thus far, about 14,000 applications have been fully submitted, and 11.4 billion has been requested, and only 90 grants have been awarded. And if you've been following the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant process, the legislation that was the law that was passed to establish it made priority categories that had to do with the amount of loss. And so the first priority was awards were expected to be done by right now, and there are only about 90 grants through that. So there's some real concern here. The thing that is good news is that they are doing a major program reset right now. So the Biden administration has really sort of taken hold of this. They are bringing in experts who worked on the SBA's Restaurant Revitalization Fund and the SBA's PPP program, which I know many of us, particularly in that second round, were able to really quickly get grants, but they're bringing those folks in to help streamline and sort of move this forward. And they are now conducting daily briefings that there are a number of arts advocacy leaders on a national front that are attending those meetings and then sharing that information out. So this is a problem. And this is one of those pieces where, you know, having really strong government bureaucracy would certainly help us in this moment, right? So they could move that money, but know that things are being moved and that there are changes being made. The Massachusetts has a chapter of the National Independent Venue Association called Save MA Stages. I'm pretty sure there are a couple of members from that group in this call. If any of you want to just pop their email into the chat, Save MA Stages is doing a really great job of sharing the communications and those updates. The other group is the Mass Live Events Coalition, who's also doing a pretty fantastic job of helping folks better understand and orient themselves into this process. So those two groups are fantastic and are made up of really strong grassroots volunteer leaders, and we should lean into supporting their work because they can support you. So next, just a reminder, right? We talked about this last time. So the American Rescue Plan Act funding is moving, right? So we knew that the first tranche of money was being distributed in May, so it's June now, and then the other tranche is coming in a year from now. So Massachusetts is going to get 5.3 billion. Counties, 14 counties will get, in Massachusetts will get 1.3. Then the towns with less than 50,000 residents, the total will be 385 million, and then metropolitan cities, it's 1.7 billion. The thing to know, just there was a little blip last week where Governor Baker's team said, it's our job to distribute the money. We're going to start doing that now. And the legislature said, no, it is not your job to distribute the money. We want to say in how that's going to happen. And so again, everything that we have heard thus far is that the legislature is going to finish up. There's a couple of key pieces of legislation that are being debated right now, including the budget. We'll get to that in a minute. But then they're going to really take up spending of American Rescue Plan Act funds in early September. That doesn't mean that they are not thinking and talking and meeting about it right now. So we're going to sort of talk a little bit about sort of what we're doing and how we're hoping that you all can help out with that. The other piece that I just want to remind everyone is that, so these towns, right, these metropolitan cities and metropolitan towns, the towns have to apply to the state to get that money released. Metropolitan cities who are in that 1.7 billion, they're getting their money directly, right? And so that the city and town leadership are going to be making decisions about how that money is going to be spent. And you should not wait in reaching out to city and town leadership to say, what are you thinking? Have you considered the impact of COVID on the arts and cultural community? Have you considered how this money can be used to reignite economic activity in our downtowns and main streets? I know that there's been a couple of conversations in a few cities and towns around that already, where advocates have gone to city leadership, and actually it's been a reasonably warm reception. So I don't think that you should should wait on that. And then also thinking that within every city and town, there's a local cultural council that is already organized to sort of help distribute money, but also is organized to sort of help unite the arts community in their city or town. So consider these options. The other big thing, right, that when it comes to the advocacy reminder I'm going to give you is the Commonwealth Cultural Futures Act, right? So this is the $200 million from that ARPA money that we really want to see allocated and committed to arts and culture recovery. Remember, individual artists would be eligible, so would nonprofit arts and cultural organizations, as well as arts businesses. So, and this is the first time we've really tried to do such a I think, broad scope piece of legislation to impact the entire ecology of arts and culture in Massachusetts. So if you have not already reached out to your legislators, please do so. If you've reached out and got a lovely message saying, yes, I want to support it, but then you notice on the website that they still haven't been a co-sponsor, you can write a extremely kind, gentle reminder to say, like, I'm really hoping to see your name so I can tell my friends and family that I'm so happy for your support. We are working, obviously we want to try to get 80 co-sponsors. We're at 56. That's pretty great. Just frankly, it's pretty great. But we have a deadline of co-sponsors by when the bill has a hearing. And while a hearing has not been scheduled yet, there's pretty good reason to think it's going to come fairly soon. So we can't let off the gas on that effort. So then let's talk about the state budget. So this is some really great news. So last week, the Senate passed their fiscal year 22 budget. Included in it was $20 million for the Mass Cultural Council's annual budget. There was no earmarks at all included in that final passed piece of legislation. So the House has a number of earmarks. The Senate, there's not a single earmark. They did have a difference in language having to do with reporting dates from the House. And what that means is because the language is different and because there are earmarks in one version, the House version and not the Senate version, this piece of the larger state budget will go into conference committee. And so this is the process where representatives from the Senate and representatives from the House negotiate the differences because they need to come up with a united version that then the full legislature can pass to put on Governor Baker's desk. Their deadline is July 1st. Oftentimes that deadline has been missed. And they go until the wee hours of the end of July. So just know that that's sort of where we are in the process, and that might happen again. But we have really good reason to believe that we're not going to go less than 20 million for the Mass Cultural Council budget, right? Because both the House and the Senate said 20 mil. So we're feeling good. You can see the names of the members of the conference committee down below. We at this time are not going to set up an advocacy email alert to write into the legislature. We're probably going to, what we'll do is because, right, it's at 20 million and because they're going to negotiate the differences, which are not, the reporting date is not going to impact how money is distributed to the arts and cultural community. So Mass Creative won't be setting up an action alert for this. What we will do is once the Conference Committee submits their report and the full legislature votes to approve the budget with the 20 million for the Mass Cultural Council, we'll set up an action alert so that you can thank every single member of our legislature for their really strong support for arts and culture. So just know that that's where we are in that. Then I want to turn our attention to the COVID-19 Cultural Impact Commission. You can see this is a reminder of what the focus of the work is. We all are commission members, so Mass Creative is on the commission, as is Mass Cultural Council, as is the New England Museum Association and the Massachusetts Theater Educators, MATG Guild, Theater Educators Guild, as well as 7 appointees, have all been working really closely over the last month or so to talk about what we're seeing as the needs in the field and talk about strategies for recovery and resilience. So the next commission meeting is going to be June 15th. In the chat, you will also see a link where you can catch a recording of the past meeting and see all the meeting notes. etc., if you want to catch up. But the other big piece, there's two pieces, is one is that we're going to hold a public hearing on June 25th at 10 a.m. And you can provide either oral or written testimony. So what does that mean? It means that you can sign up to via Zoom or, excuse me, Microsoft Teams, testify directly to the commission to talk about what the impact of COVID-19 has been to your organization or your individual artistic and creative practice, what sort of costs or what you're seeing is the need is both for yourself as well as for the larger creative community in this period of recovery and resilience. And then if you have ideas about what we should be thinking about in terms of recovery strategies. So this could be a place where folks who testify could say, I am very strongly in favor of the 200 million that's allocated from the American Rescue Plan in the Commonwealth Cultural Futures Act. I really want to see that be like a strong recommendation from this commission. You could also say, it should be more than 200 million. You could also say, I think there should be money for a broad marketing campaign for arts and culture in Massachusetts, or there needs to be more investment in arts education. We are not going to tell you what you should recommend, but this is an opportunity. This is like a real opportunity to show up, share your story, and share what you think is the proactive solutions that we as a sector need in order to recover. You can do that either, you can sign up to do it in person, or you can submit written testimony. And the commission we're going to all be there. We'll hear the oral testimony, and then we'll all read the written testimony. And all of this work is leading up to, at the end of this month, the commission is expected to submit a report to the legislature with our recommendations for the recovery and growth of the creative sector, the arts and cultural sector. So that's what we're all driving to here. And that's why we're in this process of trying to get more, solicit more feedback from the field. So there's that public hearing, and then also there's a survey. So if you don't want to submit written testimony or oral testimony, you can also take a survey that we are also continuing to collect that data. Okay. So the next piece, so this is new in terms of our conversations, but I'm sure there are many people on the call who are certainly aware of this. So the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, AKA ESSER funding, is part of the American Rescue Plan Act. And this is specific dollars to get elementary and secondary schools back in business and to really support the recovery of students in Massachusetts. So there's been 3 rounds now. The last round was part of the American Rescue Plan Act. It's round 3, and there's going to be 1.8 billion in coming to Massachusetts. And you can see what the use of there are a number of uses of the funding, but this I think is really, this was a really helpful for me to look at and say, it's meeting a wide range of needs arising from the coronavirus pandemic. And for us, and I think this is really important, addressing students' social, emotional, and mental health and academic needs resulting from the pandemic. And many of us who have spent time in arts education, in practice or field or policy know that there are some really strong indicators that engagement with arts education addresses students' social and emotional learning and health. And so we want to make sure that as the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, as well as local school districts, are thinking about how to use this money, they are hearing from arts education advocates. So we've included in the chat a little link that you can take, which the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has put out, which you can say in that survey, I think some of this funding should be used for arts education to make sure that every kid in Massachusetts can benefit from participating in arts education. The thing to know is that they had to allocate a significant amount of the money in May, but they have for like 2 to 2.5 years to spend the money out, right? So they're going to keep that survey open until I think it's 2024, and we should continue to have those conversations. And for those of you who are particularly civic minded in your cities and towns, this is a great opportunity to reach out to your school committee and your superintendent and say, I know that there's a significant amount of money that's available, and I really want to make sure that young people have connections and access to arts education. Cool. Okay, so I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a second and see if we are right at 10 o'clock, but I want to see if there are any questions. So John, I don't have a link to the June 15th meeting yet. It has not been posted on the MA legislature's website. As soon as it is, we will get that out to you all so you can watch that. And then Anne is asking, where's the survey? Where is the link? We talked about many surveys, Anne. Are you all set? Okay, thumbs up. All right. I'm just taking a quick little, are there any kind of earmarks in the House? Yes, in the House MCC budget, there are earmarks, but the way that the earmarks are written, they are written so that the earmarks add to the budget instead of saying it's going to take a piece of the budget. So for example, and I'm sorry, I didn't commit all the earmarks to memory, but if it's like Emily's theater company, we're going to get $50,000 as an earmark. The way it would be written, it would say it would add to the bottom line, so it would be $20,050,000 for the Mass Cultural Council. So those earmarks won't decrease from the amount of sort of general funds that are there for the agency to distribute. But there are a couple, and we'll see which ones survive conference committee. Christopher is asking if the great action list, can we resend? Yep. So on Monday, we will send out a digest with a recording of this webinar, and then it'll also include all the links for all the things that we talk about. So I'm just scrolling through the chat to see if there are other things. May, you ask about money that goes to the local cultural council. So I want to be really clear, when we're talking about American Rescue Plan Act money that is going to the state or going to cities and towns in Massachusetts, none of that money is going to local cultural councils. What I wanted to suggest is that we all need to think on a local advocacy level about how to engage our city and town leaders to make sure that some of that money that's going to cities and towns across Massachusetts is allocated to the recovery of arts and culture, and that there are almost as many local cultural councils as there are cities and towns in Massachusetts, and that could be a potential vehicle for the distribution of that money and a potential vehicle for organizing some advocacy around that. So that was more of a suggestion. Yes, Karen. So we have actually a running list of all the legislators who are co-sponsors. It's on our website. I don't have the capacity right now to put the link in. Maybe G, if you wouldn't mind, but we have, if you go to our homepage, the first slider you're going to see is the Commonwealth Cultural Futures Act. There you're going to see you'll click through, and if you scroll down, you'll see a list of all the co-sponsors. The other really cool thing, sorry, I didn't mention this when we were talking about it earlier, is that the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce released a report about the impact of arts and culture. Thank you, G, much appreciated. The impact of COVID-19 to the arts and cultural community, and they also include a number of recommendations for the recovery, right? And one of them was the passage of the Commonwealth Cultural Futures Act. That is fantastic to have a Chamber of Commerce sign on and endorse that bill. So we are very, very thankful for that. Yes. So Anne brings up the fact that there are in the American Rescue Plan Act, there was money that was allocated to go to the National Endowment for the Arts. The way that money is going to get distributed is the NEA is going to hold, I think it's 60% of that money for direct grant distribution. And then the other 40% is going to the regional NEA offices or agencies, which our partner in our region is the New England Foundation for the Arts, and then also to state arts agencies. So I believe, so I think there are still some decisions to be made about how that money is being distributed, both on NEFA's end as well as the Mass Cultural Council, and they will be updating us when that happens. I will also say that there's a lot of criticism about the last time that rescue funds were distributed by the National Endowment for the Arts. And with their caveat that the only people who could apply for that relief funding had to have been previous grant awardees from the last 5 years. And it really limited the ability for who could access that relief. The other thing is that, and that was the CARES money. If you looked at NEA direct relief grants of CARES money, there was not a single arts organization that is led by or serving Black, Indigenous, and communities of color. And that's a big problem. And so there's been some pretty strong advocacy on a national level that when the NEA looks to distribute that funding for this round, that they really look to change that process. And Anne just dropped in to the chat a pretty great resource for that. Okay, we are past time. This is everything I've got. So I want to just remind you, the work that we do here at Mass Creative, that I do, G does, Alex, our new intern Melanie, who's our summer intern, and Selassie, our operations manager, all do is exactly this. It's to make sure that you have the resources so that you can be effective, knowledgeable, and confident in your advocacy. And then we can make sure that everyone in the creative sector recovers and moves to a place of sustainability and resiliency that wouldn't happen without collective and coalition and action. So please consider renewing your membership. That would be just dandy. That is really a stream of revenue that allows us to do this work day in and day out. And if you haven't already, consider becoming a monthly donor, an individual monthly donor. You don't know the hope that fills my heart when I see the monthly donations come in and know that everybody's got our back and that we're working on this together. So thank you so much. This work is possible because we're all in it together. So I really appreciate you all showing up for these webinars. Our next webinar is going to be, I have to advance the slide, right? So June 25th is going to be our next webinar. We're also going to take a beat and sort of figure out what we're going to do over the summer in terms of these updates. And if you have ideas or want to give me feedback about how we can do this better, feel free to drop me a line. My email is in the chat, putting it there right now. Have great weekends all. And if it's not too hot, I hope you get outside. Bye.